Hi everyone. This video is for block number 10, October, in our block of the month challenge. If you're not participating and you'd like to join in, check the description under this video for a link to my Facebook group where you'll find all the information you need. I learned this block from watching Jenny Doan at Missouri Star Quilt. Her videos are fabulous. She calls this block 9-Patch Madness. It's not a difficult block to sew, and when you put it all together in a quilt, you get wonderful secondary patterns. So I hope you're going to enjoy it. Let's get sewing. If you're cutting this block by hand, you'll need 4 squares of pattern fabric, 4 squares of lighter background fabric, 2 squares of that lighter background fabric with diagonal draw lines, and 1 square of a different pattern fabric for your center. You can see the finished block sizes depending on the size of the squares you cut. In this design space pattern, I've used 4.67 inch squares to finish with a 12.5 inch block. So we're going to start this block by laying it out just like we do any 9 disappearing patch or 9-patch block. You're going to take your 2 pieces with the diagonal draw line and set those aside. We don't need them right away. So we're going to lay out a pattern, a background, a pattern. I'm using a different color for the center, and you'll see later on why that helps in the look. 2 background, 2 pattern, and a background. And we're going to do this phase of the block by sewing our 3 rows and then assembling the rows together. On the top and the bottom, you want to press your seam towards the outside, and on the center block, press your seam towards the middle. You want to do a good pressing, keep it nice and flat, don't stretch your fabric by pulling on it with your hot iron. And we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll see the final step where we change this block up and make it really cute. And our last row. So I've done my seams towards the outside, the inside, the outside. So for our next step, we're going to assemble our block together. We want to make sure that we're nesting our seams as always. It's so important. So if you press them in the right direction, you have one seam going right and one going left. You want to line those up. I need to trim those little threads away. Line those up so they're well nested and you get nice crisp points on your block. I'll put a pin in them just to start my sewing to make sure that they don't move. There we go. Those are lined up nicely. I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch straight along, and I'm going to repeat this process with the bottom row. Okay, we have our 9 patch sewn together, and now we're going to use our 2 squares with the diagonal lines. We're going to put them corner to corner, not beside each other. You want to be on opposite ends, and you want to line them up with the bottom edge, not this top edge. Line them up with the bottom and the side edge. That's where you're going to sew them. Line them up nice and straight. I put a pin in them just to keep them in place so I don't move them as I go to my sewing machine. We're going to sew a diagonal line right across. If you like to keep these excess corners, you can sew a second line about 1/2 inch away from the original. We'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so now we have these corners snowballed. We're going to trim about 1/4 inch from our diagonal sew line and cut that off. And then again on the other side. There we go. And I'm going to press these open, and we'll cut our 9 patch afterwards. There we go. You're going to have a little bit of excess overhang on these sides. Not to worry about it. In the end, we'll straighten that all out. So I'm just going to line up my block on my mat to find my center point. And now we're going to cut it in half. Keep it lined up. And we're going to cut it in half in the other direction. And there we go. Now we have our 4 squares. And we're going to take the 2 with the solid corners, not your half squares, not your half square triangles, the 2 with the solid corners, and we're going to flip them around. And this is how we get our finished pattern. Isn't that cute? So now we're going to do the same. We're going to assemble our blocks together, our squares together to make 2 rows, and then attach the 2 rows together to make our final block. And here's our 2 rows finished. One is pressed towards the right and one towards the left. So now we're just going to line up our center block. We're going to nest that seam. That's very important. You want to make sure it's well nested so you get a nice center on your block. And we're going to sew 1/4 inch right across to finish our block. Square it up to whatever size you're making, and we're done. And here's our finished block. Isn't that cute? So I need to square this up to make sure all my sides are nice and straight. And cutting with Design Space, my block will be 12.5 inches finished, because in Design Space I'm using 4 2/3 for each block, 4.67. If you aren't already participating in our Block of the Month challenge, just check below this video in the description. You'll find a link for my Facebook group. And in our files, you can find the Block of the Month document with all the blocks that you need to participate. I hope you're going to enjoy sewing this block number 10, and thank you for watching.